acrylics, and so on. But we've got all those. But now there's music, and it may be, I mean, the authentic revelation from Sinai, Spencer, is that it occurred to you to call this, that what came down to you was to call this Dilit. And now it becomes your responsibility, or at least opportunity, maybe sacred opportunity, to play with the word a little bit. Its swing and its sway, and what stabilizes it, and what moves it, and what vistas get opened and closed. And maybe other people have things to say about that too. If you are so moved and you want to put a recording of it on our page, we would really love to have it. And maybe people, you could write a few words, or people could write some words about it. But first things first, it's very lovely, very haunting. And thank you for the gift for the group.
Thank you for allowing me to share it.
Yeah.
It's my honor, truly.
Well, thank you. You may have noticed, especially those with practiced eyes, that I am in the hospital. And I came to the hospital yesterday. This actually relates in a certain way to the story that we're going to read. I came to the hospital yesterday in response to what was really a hurricane of chills and fever that came up in a bunch, in a rush, after a very clear morning. Think about that phenomenon at the beach or wherever you go, where the weather changes so quickly. My morning, starting very early, like 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, was really lovely. Up and about and writing and reading and feeling really happy and very energetic. And then all of a sudden came the hurricane, and the wind blew, and I started shaking, and it was clear that I had chills, and it was clear, because it happened once before, that there was an infection. So we came to the Duke emergency room, which is not a place where you'd really like to spend a lot of time. It's not emergency department. The emergency department is not, it's a raft, on which they float you until they can actually get you someplace else. And while I was there, I will tell you that I met this I met a bunch of really interesting people that I can tell you about another time. Except to say that under these circumstances, I do enjoy thinking about the Elijah-ness of the people that I meet, if I can get to it. So Amarachi, the nurse, I come to find out, an Obi, that means grace of God. And she has an aunt who is a nun in Germany, and an uncle who is a priest in Germany. And then Chelsea has a degree in divinity from Vanderbilt, as well as a nursing degree. And Mark, who helped me in the CT scan, brought me to tears when he actually touched my arm. I didn't realize how much I missed that. But in order to take the CT scan, after injecting the contrast dye into my vein, he had to prop my arm up, and he did it, and he held my forearm, and he didn't have a glove on. And it actually brought me to tears. And I said to him, this is really extraordinary. I don't think that kind of healing touch, I can't remember when that kind of healing, supporting physical touch has been part of the world, or my world, for a long time. And I feel honored to be learning about it again. So good things happened along the way. I do have, you can see a kind of a black eye, or bloody.
And I didn't do it.
Bloody eye, a spontaneous bleed, apparently, so say the ophthalmologists, from the blood thinner that I take, from the Eliquis. I might have slept on my hand or rubbed it vigorously or whatever. In any event, the ophthalmologists looked here and there and the next place because they leave no body tissue unturned. And they found that everything was in excellent working order and that I would just have to wait until this went away. And all of the other tests that I have had over the last day have shown me to be in excellent working order, with the CT scan that shows really no change, which to me means excellent working order. But in terms of other vitals and other kinds of things, really good. And I wanted to do this. I really, really, really wanted to do this tonight because I have the energy for it. And I wanted, I feel like it's part of a teaching mission in a certain way for me to share these moments. These are really vital moments. And I feel very strengthened by the connection with people and with the texts that we read. And it just gives me a very significant amount of energy, and it's very healing. So I thank you for being really part of that process. As we come to I think we come to a close in talking about doors and doorways as a unique and discrete theme. We will continue to talk about it, but it's going to switch gears next time, which will be after Pesach. It'll switch gears to Torah from heaven. Torah from the heavens and heaven from the Torah. We get Torah we have a sacred story about Torah from the heavens, but we have personal stories and life stories about heaven from the Torah, that we derive a notion of what heaven is from the Torah that we have. So that's where we're going to go between Pesach and Shavuot, I think. And tonight, this story features Elijah, who is the icon of doorways, but curiously, he doesn't appear in any. He doesn't make a monumental or dramatic appearance in the doorway. He clearly bridges worlds, and just in bridges generations and bridges worlds. And with that in mind, I subtitled with pun in mind, I subtitled the text that we're going to read, Door le Door. So, Jenna, we can look at it, I think.
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. And Sue Clapper, you may see your work down there at the bottom. Pretty nice, huh?
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Lovely shade of light blue.
Oh my goodness. I'm taking it down.
Well, you look at the top. The top is dark blue. So
It is.
It's beautiful.
It is. It's a very lovely merging of blues, and it is very ancient looking and also not so ancient looking. And
hobbits inside.
it has a certain strength to it. Really, you think it's a small door? You think it's a hobbit door?
I'm not sure. I think it can be whatever you want it to be.
Okay. Well, here is our story. The curtain comes up on the Bait Midrash of Rabbi. Rabbi is the title given to Yehuda Hanasi. Everybody who's a rabbi is a rabbi, but only Yehuda Hanasi, the great sage, the editor of the Mishnah, beginning of the 3rd century, end of the 2nd, beginning of the 3rd century. Only he is called rabbi without any name attached to it. I attached the name so that we wouldn't be confused. Elijah would come to the Beit Midrash of Rabbi. One day, It was Rosh Chodesh, the celebration of the new month. Rabbi waited for him, for Elijah, but he did not come. When he arrived, Rabbi said to him, "Why was the master late?" Elijah replied, "First, I got Abraham up. I washed his hands and waited for him to pray and laid him down again. Then I did the same for Isaac and then for Jacob. So it took a long time." He ran out of time. This is an interesting story in which Elijah fulfills the role of standing between, at the doorway between generations. Rosh Chodesh is so compelling, the beginning of the new month and its celebration, so compelling that, of course, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would be stirred to their very bones or their very dust and need to rise or need to be resurrected, let's say. It would need to be resurrected. Well, what do you make of that part of the story before we even go on? I wonder whether Yehuda Hanasi was annoyed.
Steve, why do you think they call him the master? Why did the rabbi say, why was the master late?
It's an honorific.
Okay.
Yeah. Speaking to Elijah, he knows that it's Elijah. Not everybody who studies with Elijah knows. And I wonder in my movie version, people are coming in to study with the master, study with Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi all the time. And I wonder whether anybody else knows that it's Elijah, or whether people just guess or think one of these folks is Elijah, and therefore confer a certain kind of honor and beneficence on anybody who walks into the Bait Midrash. I'm not sure, but he calls him master in the third person because that's what you do for his honor or her honor.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's how you
And I
do it.
figure maybe Rabbi was concerned.
Concerned about Elijah?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe something happened to him.
And why on just Rosh Chodesh did this happen?
Well,
Clear that it wasn't it clear that it didn't happen every day?
this was Rosh Chodesh, the storyteller tells us, and invites us to put some other things in order, let's say. Rosh Chodesh, Sherry was saying that this is a holiday that figures prominently at a certain point in Jewish history in the lives of women. And I don't know whether that's the case here, but I don't think it has much to do with it unless there's a general ambiance of the holiday that's being felt, but it's not really being addressed. It is, however, a time when there's a big kiddush. Pete drives to Posen's. There's a big kiddush, and there's deli and herring and scotch and those wonderful chocolate brownies with the white squiggles on the top and so on. And there's a wonderful Torah reading, and there's a Hallel, and it's a celebration of renewal when the month begins again.
Steve, one thing, Rabbi might have been impatient or annoyed. I don't necessarily read that here, but I think it's telling that, the rabbi asks a basic question, and Elijah gives a very straightforward answer, as wild as it is. And he doesn't start by saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm late," which I think is really, uh, a statement as well. He had other things he was doing. He got there when he could get there.
Very nice. He had other things doing. Adina.
What is the significance that Elijah had the responsibility of reviving Abraham,
Keep on.
Isaac, and Jacob? Why did they not revive by them? What was his
Hmm.
role in making it happen? Why did they not just revive themselves? What is the human intervention in this act? If it's a divine act, what is it about Elijah that makes it happen?
That's a really interesting question for which I don't have an interesting answer. It's just
No,
speculation.
it's just a question. Yeah, for the
But
yeah.
maybe other people have some thoughts about it. Thank you, Sue.
No,
To
Heschel's,
follow,
you know
Yeah.
how on Shabbat we make a different architecture, we make architecture of time. We don't do time the same. Maybe Elijah was not doing time the same way, like Heschel.
Maybe Elijah doesn't do time the same way
On Shabbat.
on Shabbat or on Rosh Chodesh. It's
Yeah.
a timeless time, and everybody has a life. Somebody else started to talk.
well,
Sorry.
Elijah seems to bridge this world and the next world. And following up on Adina's point, it seems more important for him to facilitate prayer for those in the next world than to participate in study in this world.
All right, or even to come to shul, whether he was going to, what he was going to do, he was going to sit down with the Gemara, or he was going to daven. Oh, but somehow it sounds like in the language of the storyteller in the white spaces, there was a schedule, and Elijah was late, and late for exactly what? And apparently Rosh Chodesh has something to do with it, a celebratory time when everything in the world offers its praise, and there is life and vitality on every level of existence, but not everybody can touch every level of existence. However, it seems like Elijah can. Errol.
Along the lines of what it's doing. Essentially, Rabbi is asking, why aren't you on my schedule? While Elijah is celebrating Rosh Chodesh on his schedule, his way.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
He is not following Rabbi. Rabbi is, he is not subservient to Rabbi. Rabbi, in a way, is subservient to him.
There are priorities, and somehow resurrecting, as it were, the patriarchs is a priority. Now, this is not the end of time, and we're not told this is a resurrection story, but it's a mini resurrection story, isn't it? We might tell it also. Does anybody here have an ancestor of whom you know whose name is Avraham? How about Yitzchak? Yeah. How about Yaakov? Or Sarah, or Rivka, or Rachel, yeah, or Leah. There are a bunch. As it happens, I have a great-grandfather whose name was Avraham, a great-grandfather who never came to this country. Sent his family, but he never came. And he never came because this was a treif country. But the rest, he said goodbye to his family.
Wow.
And one of our family members came upon his gravestone, knew where to look. I don't know anymore where he looked. That's lost in the dim, misty recesses of the last few decades. But he did a copy, a hand copy in calligraphic style of my great-grandfather's tomb. And that tomb says, and he was left by his family, and all he had was this little piece of earth. This on his tombstone. So there's an Avraham. My father is Yitzchak, and that great-grandfather's son, my grandfather, is Yaakov. And sometimes when I have this story in mind, I will say I will resurrect each of them. Not that I knew my great-grandfather, but Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Avraham. spend a little time with Avraham, putting him on his feet. And Avraham, who's a member of my family, who is complex and I don't understand because he didn't go with his family. Elohei Yitzchak. A little bit harder because my father lived 17 years with Parkinson's. So I could see getting him up would be a little bit harder. Elohei Yaakov. What does my grandfather have to bring me in this particular Amidah or this day when I'm thinking about him? And I don't do it all the time, but the story is instructive in that way for me. Eliyahu yielding to Eliyahu moments where I get to do what Eliyahu did. And there is a surrealistic piece of this story, I think, in a very matter-of-fact fashion. When Rabbi says to him, "Why was the master late?" Elijah replied, "First I got Abraham up and washed his hands and waited for him to pray and laid him down again. And then I did the same for Isaac and then for Jacob." What are you going to do? It takes time to do that. Not an explanation, not a statement of wonderment, not, "You'll never understand how this works or what it is." It feels to me like he expects Rabbi to understand what he has done. And Rabbi seems to, because look what happens next. Rabbi says to him, "You should have awakened them all at the same time." Rabbi seems to be a little bit peckish here. He's not happy. He's yeckish. He wanted Eliyahu there for whatever reason. He wanted him on time. He wasn't on time. He gave the explanation. Rabbi does not look skeptically at the explanation, but in his next fit of peckish behavior, he says, "Well, you should have awakened them all at the same time." I love that. It feels like Borges to me. You know, it feels like that kind of historical, magical presence. "You should have awakened them all at the same time," Rabbi said. Elijah answered, "I reasoned that if they all prayed together, their prayers would be so powerful that it would bring the Messiah before his time." Just thinking. Said Rabbi, "Are there any like those three living in this world?" "Yes," Elijah answered, "Rabbi Chia and his sons." Well, what do you think of that exchange? What's going on in that exchange?
I find it very interesting, the emphasis on not bringing the Messiah before his time, that the conventional understanding is the Jewish eagerness for the Messiah, but maybe there is not, or should I say there can be a wrong time for the Messiah to come.
Yeah, but it seems like there could be a wrong time for the Messiah to come, but what time would that be, Harold?
Well, it is kind of fun to watch now this games playing about being on time, being late. You know, I'll show you on time. You want to, you know, you want to mess with the whole universe here? I'll mess with it, or maybe I won't. You know, you're playing with powers beyond your understanding, all because you're being, you know, peckish that I'm late. They're playing. The stakes are getting higher by the moment.
Yeah, Melanie.
Yeah, and I sort of feel like, who is this rabbi that's telling Elijah what to do? You know, like, where does he come off? And so, you know, like he sort of says, well, you know, so you reason this? He says, so you think you've got somebody else who could do this? It's sort of like, okay, but I'm surprised that Elijah is like, listen, you know, it's the power differential. What happened that Elijah is a servant of the rabbi, or he has to come at a certain time? Where did, you know, I know that Yehuda Hanasi, I mean, at least in Hebrew school, he was, when we would quote him, he was a big hoo-ha, but why was he any bigger than all the other rabbis?
Yeah, he was the
Or,
most.
you know, I mean, what was so special about him? So why is it that he gets to, you know, to call up Elijah and not somebody else?
He was the most aristocratic, the most erudite, the one who undertook the project of putting together the Mishnah.
Okay, so he was it was legitimate for Elijah to be around for him.
Yeah, but you point out a very interesting dynamic, which I think is at the heart of the story and at the soul of all Elijah's stories, which is what's the relationship between Elijah and his earthly chavrutot. He has a chavruta with Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. He has one with Rabbi Bar Shela. He has a number of them. He has his favorites, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi apparently is a favorite. And it seems to me that while he's been coming to the Bait Midrash of Rabbi, it's been less than a month because Rabbi didn't expect that he would be late for on Rosh Chodesh. So that's just my own little movie version elaboration of the story. But part of the point here is, with whom do you lock horns? With whom do you enter the lists? With whom do you enter the arena of Torah? What the rabbis called milchemta shel Torah, the war of Torah, actually trying to sharpen each other's traditions, one against the other, and looking towards the future. And it feels to me like this is delightful for Rabbi and for Eliyahu Hanavi. It's delightful for Rabbi because he's got a chavruta who is his match, who in some ways already knows how this is going to be decided one way or another. He's not allowed to say it, I think. He's allowed to argue. He's allowed to argue. No insider trading information, but he's allowed to argue. And if the point of the future or the blade of the future gets sharpened on an argument because Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says, well, if that's the case, then this needs to happen in the community, then Elijah has accomplished an Eliyahu purpose without revealing that information. And I think that it feels to me like that's what's going on here.
It's not like he's saying, prove it.
No.
Okay.
No. Eliyahu says, hold on a second. Yeah, I would like to look at the Hebrew just for a second. Okay, that's good. That's right. That's good. Rabbi says to him, it's at the end of the third line. It's not Hebrew, it's Aramaic, so we're not going to pachku with it. Velok menuhu behade hadade, excuse me. Wake them up at the same time, he says. And Elijah says, Savri, I reasoned. I reasoned. That's the language of the Chavruta. That's the language
Say that before the
of
Kiddush.
that's the language of the Talmud. It means something slightly different there, but yeah, that's the language of the Talmud. I reasoned it out. This is your language. This is earthly language. I'm telling you this without breaking any rules. Takvi berachmame. They would be so powerful in their love that they would bring the Mashiach, Bila Zimne. And now, having said that, having used the language of the Chavruta, now Rabbi is picking up the dog whistles. He's picking up the signals. We're now back in our Talmudic argument. So he asks this very interesting question. So are there any like these three living in this world? Wow. Bringing the Messiah before his time sounds like a very, very cool idea. And if we have people like those three, like the three great tenors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who live in this world, acknowledging that wherever Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob live, it's not this world. And Elijah has actually given Rabbi a chance to probe this a little bit. I reasoned that if I woke them all up at the same time, that they would bring the Mashiach before his day. And so Rabbi says, without breaking any rules, well, are there people who are that powerful? Do they have voices? Is there a chavruta? Is there a triad? Is there a group of people who can stir the pot of community to raise its voice in a way that would bring the Mashiach? Is there that much ruach in the community? And what do you need to have that ruach in the community? And wink, wink. Rabbi said, are there any like those three living in this world? Wink, wink. Yes, Elijah answered. Rabbi Chia and his sons, who, as it happens, are friends and business colleagues of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. Rabbi decreed a fast and summoned Rabbi Chia and his sons to lead the prayer. Rabbi Chia prayed, Mashiv haruach, let the wind blow. And it blew fiercely. He prayed, let the rain fall, morid hageshem. And the rain began to fall. And he was about to pray, Michaye hametim, revive the dead. That's the third part. Mashif haruach morid hageshem. Michaye metim berachamim rabim. Revive the dead. That's the in the Amidah. Yeah. He was about to pray, revive the dead, Michaye hametim, and the world trembled. In heaven, they said, who has revealed secrets to the world? Others replied, Elijah, of course. They summoned Elijah and lashed him with 60 pulses of light, pulse denura, 60 pulses of light. Elijah, in the likeness of a fiery bear, entered the prayer group and scattered it. Don't you wish you had the language and the associations to tell stories like that? Oh, wow. But what do we think about it? I guess that's our question now. What do we think about it? It's very powerful. It's very potent. Rabbi,
Well,
yeah, sorry.
I got to say, my first thing is it reminded me of your shaking chills.
Yes.
Those pulses of light. That you picked a good reading for this.
That's right. I said that it played into my my physical symptoms. Yeah.
But it sounds like Elijah, after all, is the keeper of time. He's been accused of being late. As I guess people hope the Messiah will show up, and he's never seems to be on time either, at least not our time. But Elijah is revealed here as he keeps time. He's going to scatter the prayer group before the Messiah will be called before his time, and everything's going to go wrong.
Yeah. Everything's going to go wrong, you say?
Yeah, if the Messiah comes before he's meant to be here.
And that's a big question. When is that supposed to happen? Yeah, it's a question that remains ambiguous. And every year at the Pesach Seder, when we sing Bimhera b'yameinu yavo eleinu, may you come quickly and in our day. Maybe there's a resonance of that. What is that? What are we actually asking for? Are we ready for that? Can we handle some version of messianic presence in a way that maybe the world isn't ready for? Or is Elijah in some ways standing there saying, no, you don't want that? I don't know.
Well, he's got a lot of responsibility, it's a heavy, it's a heavy burden to be responsible for making sure things happen at the right time.
Yeah.
Wondering what the significance of the 60 pulses. Why 60 and not another number?
I'm sure that there's a reason for it, and I don't know it, whether it's used in other parts of the Gemara or in somewhat other later Aramaic literature and transposed back into this. I don't know, but I will try to find out. I don't know. Errol.
It's almost as if Elijah is testing Rabbi Chia. He would not, he did not want the Messiah to come. That's why he didn't do the prayer simultaneously. But he gave Rabbi Chia the key to doing it, to being in charge of it himself. And
yes.
Rabbi Chia Rabbi summoned Rabbi Chia, and essentially said, "You do what Elijah would not do."
Right.
And then Elijah, as almost as sound as, went to him and said, "What the hell are you doing? Get out of here."
Well, yeah. Elijah can't do it. Rabbi picks up the clue from Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, summons these three, and which leaves me mystified as to how three people were shlichei tzibur or davened, or whether one of them davened and the other two stood on his side and just supported him. I don't know. How do we want to make that movie? But that's up for grabs. There's something special about Rabbi Chia and his sons that Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi has not yet probed. And in order to make this happen, Spencer, hold on just a second. In order to make this happen, Rabbi has to declare a fast. And whether it's a fast because it hasn't rained, or whether it's a fast because there's a pack of wolves ravaging the countryside. There are other kinds of reasons why cities close up and have that consciousness of needing to fast and huddle together and all wear masks and so on. If I can merge the modern and the ancient. So we don't really know, but he's got the power to do it. And he does it. He contrives to do it. And then he invites these shlichei tzibur to come and lead the service. So Spencer and then Errol.
I was looking at a potential meaning for the 60 lashes, and I looked up which letter it corresponded to, which was Samech. And Samech corresponds to Ein Sof, the godliness without end. So I like the idea of like Elijah having the fear of God put in him by like being exposed to that type of godliness to remind him of like, hey, trying to create a system here and try not to mess with it like that. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Errol.
Yeah, it's almost as if Rabbi was saying, "You did not have the nerve to do this, but I am going to take over. I am going to take charge of what you do not have the nerve to do," in a way. And in other words, he's seeking to replace Elijah.
He's seeking to take that which Elijah has taught him and transfer it and translate it into the terms of the world in which people live. Elijah doesn't live in that world anymore. Elijah has been assumed into heaven in a fiery chariot, and he comes back as an advocate for human beings, but there's some things he's not allowed to say, apparently, and he's not allowed to reveal the future. He's not allowed to reveal even the vague future, but he can reveal, or he can move somebody, he can lead somebody as smart and perceptive as Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. He can move him to not predict the vague future, but the intense present. Yeah. All right, who right now can do this? Bring Mashiach now. And Elijah tells him. Should Elijah have told him? It seems like what's the judgment in the story? Apparently not. Well, we'll see. We'll get to it. Bernie, Shari, Spencer, Rachel.
Hey there. So in heaven, they said, who has revealed secrets to the world? Who's the they?
They don't tell us.
So is it, I mean, I would have thought, God, whatever that looks like, would have some concern. And I'm thinking, is this a group of people like we would have a group of people here on earth who would, like a Bait Din or some other group? Like, it just raises more questions for me.
Sure. I suppose it seems to me like it was malachim. It was angels, some political party of angels who said, who would do such a thing? And then the anti-Elijah people who think he's always out to spill the beans said it must have been Elijah. But the storyteller recedes into the cloud of the pronouns there and doesn't tell us. Spencer, Rachel?
I had my hand, I forgot to lower it.
Okay.
Rachel, go ahead.
Rachel? Are you there?
Yeah, I didn't have my hand up.
Oh.
Is there another Rachel?
Not for me.
But I will say, I love that last paragraph. It is so weird and ambiguous that just, I love that. They said, others, they summoned, they, zap him with all this light, and then he becomes a fiery bear, like the light actually, activates him. And just, I didn't have my hand up, but I'm happy to say all that because I love the weirdness of it.
It's very Burning Man, Rachel.
It's a little Sharknado also. Yeah, it's yeah. Anybody else have a thought about that last paragraph?
Well, for one, I want to go back to the last line or this paragraph before just for a moment. And it's like Rabbi here knows his power. And obviously, he says the words and it happens. The wind blows, the rain falls. And he didn't actually say the words, revive the dead, but the world trembled anyway. Like the world, meaning I think the heavens, knew what was going to happen. And so that really says to me, that's where the power is.
They all know the davening. It's an interesting question whether Rabbi Chia and his sons know how powerful they are. And I think about this sometimes. We all have our favorite shlichei tzibur in the synagogues that we attend, the favorite representatives of the community who just make the strings of the community members vibrate in particular ways when they join in melodies or they participate with their harmonies and so on, and raise the roof of the synagogue back in the days when we could actually do that. We have maybe we have our favorite fantasy shlichei tzibur. I want Elton John to daven Musaf. Yeah. Harold?
Just to say, this story reminds me of a movie H.G. Wells wrote called The Man Who Could Work Miracles. I don't know if H.G. Wells was a Torah scholar, but he tells the story, and he actually wrote the movie script or the adaptation for the movie. And in the movie, a very ordinary man is walking along, and two immortals show up, and they have an argument about what if this man had more power? What would he be like? Would he be noble? Would he know what to do with it? Would he make a mess of things? And they decide to give him immeasurable power, godlike power. And at first, he discovers by accident he has some power, and he asks for very petty things. But eventually, he gets to the point where he's just about to use his power in a way that would literally make the world tremble. And the immortals decide, wait a minute, maybe this was a mistake. But it just comes to mind here because, I know I saw that movie a long time ago, and this problem that human beings really shouldn't have, the keys to the car. It's dangerous. And all parents know that sometimes, should this kid have the keys to the car? Maybe not. So I get the sense that that's what this story is kind of about. It'd be nice to have the car, but maybe we're not ready for that. Got to mature a little bit.
Interesting, provocative. Sounds like a movie that's a wonderful commentary on the text. Adina. You're muted.
I wonder what the more contemporary use of the term pulsa de nura is used, because I remember it was used around Rabin's assassination.
Right.
And
Right.
and I wonder if here it looks like it was used is it because one should not do anything that brings the Mashiach, that brings redemption too early? Is that what is considered today?
Yeah.
It,
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's considered to be like a death ray. I think it's considered to be a punishment,
okay.
An absolute punishment. But it's an interesting question whether it still has something of that language
Okay.
attached to it.
Okay.
Who else has a hand up? I guess.
I have a hand up.
Uh-huh.
What can you share about the backstory or the relationship between Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi and Rabbi Hia outside of this particular story?
They are, as I recall, they are partners in a flax business in Tiberias. And they're old study partners and they're old friends. And I believe that Rabbi Chia and his sons are all buried together on a hill in Tiberias. And not Yehuda Hanassi, but Rabbi Chia and his sons. And people go there in order to get them, now that they have translated themselves into another world, to get them to pray, to intercede. But apparently interceding in the other world is something that Elijah is not supposed to, he doesn't let that happen. And he's struggling at the traces here. He's pulling at the traces. He wants the Mashiach to come, but he can't bring him. And so when he says, Savri, I reasoned that if I had woke them all up together, that their prayer would be so powerful, it would bring the Mashiach. Then in this wonderful give and take between Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, who sees intensely into the present, and Eliyahu Hanavi, who sees more vaguely into the future, and there's more at stake for Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, he says, wow, that's really interesting. Let's see, are there three people who we could get to daven now who have the energy to bring the Mashiach before his time? Yes, says Rabbi. As a matter of fact, since you ask, Rabbi Chia and his sons, do they know, going back to what I guess Sheila was saying before, do they know that they have that power? I don't know. Maybe they don't. But this is also a bit of the Eliyahu-ness of the moment, putting people together in ways where they produce more than the sum of their parts and more energy than could possibly have been imagined. And it's starting to work. And with everything he says, Rabbi Chia says, Mashiv Haruach, and the wind blew fiercely, and Morid Hageshem, and the rain began to fall. And now he is about to pray. It's not the next phrase in the liturgy, but he's coming to it, and he's about to pray it, and the world is trembling. Why did the world tremble?
They're afraid.
They are afraid. The world, whatever that means, the world of the malachim, the world of the angels, the celestial world, the world that knows something about the way history is supposed to unfold, however we want to say it, that world is trembling because they're afraid he might say it. If he says it, then history tumbles. History tumbles. And all of the unfolding history that's supposed to unfold for centuries and centuries does not unfold. Yes, he has the nuclear codes. And in heaven, they said, who has revealed secrets to the world? Well, strictly speaking, Elijah didn't reveal any secrets, but that was just pretty transparent. He sort of did. Yeah, he sort of did. Others replied it was Elijah, and they summoned Elijah and they lashed him with 60 pulses of light. And now comes Rachel's favorite part. Elijah, in the likeness of a fiery bear, entered the prayer group and scattered it. What the dickens is that about? Yeah, Melanie.
I'm just taken with the 60 pulses of light, the 60 seconds, the 60 minutes, the circle of time, the clock, how fast is that 60 pulses of light? They get it to him and they zap him, but guess what? He just pulverizes them and says, okay, you're out of here. I'm not going to let you do this.
Well, that's interesting in that it introduces another theme of how time works in that world. Basically, Harold was introducing that theme before, because apparently they can summon him, chastise him, whip him, and send him into that prayer group to scatter it. Yeah, in the space of a phrase, of a liturgical phrase. So it's really fast. Lori, you had something to add.
I was actually about to make the same point that you just made. Like, all of this transpired somewhere between Morid HaGeshem and before Mechaye HaMetim, that it happened that quickly.
Yeah. Some other indication of how, at least for the storyteller, time becomes of less concern. And
how the story started to begin with, that things move in different places at different paces in different worlds.
yes. Yeah, that's quite right. A really good observation. Why did Elijah have to enter the prayer group like a fiery bear and scatter it? Well, a bit. I don't know how you want to make this movie, but as I make the movie, he is lashed, and he wears these furry garments anyway, and they're all standing on end, and his hair is standing on end, and he's roaring. So is he actually a bear, or does he just appear to be a luminous bear in the story, in the imagination of the storyteller, and enter into this prayer group and scatter it? But he has to scatter it because
They don't have a minion.
they then won't have a prayer group. They won't have the specific gravity, the specific density for a prayer group. And it raises very, very interestingly, very fully, the question of how powerful is prayer really? Do we really, people who have this attitude of praying to bring the Messiah, do they have, would they be surprised? Are they really praying to bring the Messiah, or are they praying to get through the davening so that they can have herring and scotch? And if the Mashiach comes and there's no herring and scotch, they're going to be upset. So yeah, so what are you expecting, really? Amichai wrote a poem that I can't quote for you right now, but he basically said the following: if people pray, if people say Sim Shalom, and they say Sim Shalom, Sim Shalom, maybe God takes that more seriously, and maybe if people start singing, Sim Shalom Tova Uveracha, that God thinks they're just singing a song. They don't really need it. I can send you the poem. It's a short little poem. But what's the affect that you bring with the prayer? Are you trying to bring the Mashiach? This is in some ways a story about the power or the potential power of prayer. And regardless of what God wants, if whoever was paying attention to this, whoever the Shomrim were in heaven, who were listening to this, and all of a sudden seeing the storm come up, the wind blow, Sager get chills and a fever, and thinking, oh, this is really powerful. Mechaye Hametim is going to change everything. It could change everything. And it's not God's idea, apparently, to stop it. It's all the angels who are thinking, oh, we're out of jobs. Or, the celestial world won't work the way it's supposed to work if this happens. So it has to stop. But if they're not vigilant and they don't stop it, human beings have the capacity to do it. And the only way to actually stop it is not for God to wave a magic wand and say, I nullify what they've done, because that can't happen. Once they do it, it's done. The only way is for a bomb to explode inside the shul, as it were. Elijah has to scatter those people. They can't be the sum of their parts and more, led by Rabbi Chia and his sons. They have to just be frightened individuals. And that's the only way to preserve the world as the world is. So these are some of the interesting characteristics of Elijah that I thought we could share together this evening. And now take a little break for Pesach and move into a world of receiving the Torah. What do you think? Yeah, let's do that. I would very much like to do that. Thank you, everybody. And
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you,
Hope you're feeling
Rabbi.
better.
Rabbi, we send you wishes of health and healing, and your teaching is unbelievable coming from a hospital bed.
Yes, that is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
Touch our
Yes.
heart.
Shlema.
For
Above and
Shlema.
beyond. Thank you.
Chag Sameach, everyone.
Yes.
Chag
Pesach
Sameach.
Sameach.
my pleasure, our pleasure. We're glad to set it up. And we closed the door and asked the nurses not to come into the room for an hour, which is really a godsend for us.
Maybe you should do this more often.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Be
Good
well.
night.
Sameach.
Sameach, everyone.
Sameach.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Good night.